But you weren't able to contact any of the others?
Couldn't find them.
Couldn't find
I
them.
tried them. Now, you know, let's say they're in their 30s at the time. They probably, many of them were not alive anymore. I did find the grave of one of the fellas. There were 2 black guys and 4 white guys. One of the 2 black recruits who drowned, Leroy Thompson, and he came from, it's just a Somerville, Somerton, up by Manning, and so I guessed that he might have been buried up in that area, and then I looked into black cemeteries, because of course this was that era, Jim Crow, and I found one in that era, and went through the cemetery and found his gravestone.
Wow.
Untended. You know.
This is not a writing question so much, but I'm curious, in your experience as a trial lawyer and a judge, and now your experience in researching the military court, and of course there's a lot of differences, I know, but how do you think the trial in the military court stood up? I mean, you've already given, you've already lauded the panel, but the court and the proceedings itself, were they pretty?
The way it was set up at that time, I know next to nothing about military law because I've never had anything to do with it, but the way the court was set up, and I'm told that it is not the same now under the UCMJ, was you had the general court marshal, you had a panel of 7 officers who were like jurors, really. And you had a president of the court, who was one of the 7, but his function was pretty limited, more than a juror would be, but largely certain basic administrative stuff. Then you had a law officer, who was sort of like a judge, basically, who had ruled on what evidence was admissible and so forth and so on. I thought that the law officer was his first major court-martial, and I think he had solicited this for the notoriety of it. Made a lot of mistakes, And it may be that, does anybody here have a legal background at all?
I've been through general court-martial.
That
qualifies.
Well, basically there are two common forms of objectionable type of evidence, and one is called hearsay. When somebody testifies about what somebody else said, it's no good because you want the person who said it. You bring them in so that they can be cross-examined on how accurate it was and whether they were able to perceive what they claim they saw and so forth and so on. If somebody else is telling it, you can't cross-examine them. And the other is opinion evidence. And there are certain types of experts who can testify as to opinions if it's a technical matter and the jury wouldn't understand it. You know, if you had a chemical poisoning trial, you might want a chemist to come in and testify in some fashion to help the jurors out and that kind of a thing. What happened here was the law officer let all kinds of information go in, including some hearsay, but the opinion stuff at the end, I thought was way beyond what should have been permissible. So let Chesty Puller testify that the trial was a mistake and they should in effect acquit him. That's the ultimate issue that a jury's supposed to decide. That's not what Chesty Puller's supposed to decide.
And then let the commandant.
And same with the commandant.
So they should take a strike.
You're right. Take away a stripe. Not only that, I mean, it would be bad enough in a civilian context, but in a military context where he's the commandant of the Marine Corps, saying to a major or a lieutenant colonel, take away a stripe. It's almost the equivalent of an order.
Yeah.
Where were you living when you started doing this work?
I was living in Newburyport, Massachusetts.
And do you find it ironic you ended up in Beaufort?
I ended up in Beaufort because I came down here with my wife for a book signing, and we both liked the area. Mm-hmm. We vacationed here for a while and then moved here. So
you live in Beaufort?
I live in Beaufort.
Oh,
so that was very much the product of of this book.
Of the book, right?
Yeah.
Because you had never thought about coming back to
Oh, I
Parris
never
Island.
wanted to go near the place.
Right.
Yeah.
And now when you go there, you can see how beautiful the place is.
Yeah, well, I see how small it is too.
And the gorgeous
You
murder.
looked a lot bigger back then, didn't it?
It was so much bigger when all you see is the back of a head 24 inches in front of you, and you're marching everywhere. And now you drive a mile, and it seemed like it was a half a day's march.
Did you, you said that you really didn't have any experience as a creative writer.
I have no training whatsoever, and no real experience, actually.
Did you study any writing manuals? Is there any in particular that you use or that you would recommend? Or how did you prepare yourself to write this? Or did it just come naturally, this talent that you have?
Well, you know, I took English Comp in college, and I had Strunk and whatever it is.
Strunk and White?
Strunk and White, Elements of Style, and E.B. White's book, which I, you know,
E.B.
referred to
White, great
occasionally.
essayist.
But the rest of it, I just winged it from there.
Well, are you an avid reader?
I read 15, 20 books a year. I don't know if that's, I don't think that qualifies as avid, but I am a reader.
What sorts of books do you like to read?
I read about 70% nonfiction and 30% fiction. I read more fiction now because I work in Massachusetts part-time and I travel, and so I read junk on the plane, you know, mysteries and that kind of stuff.
Recent read.
I like history. I was a history major in college.
History major.
I like history. Yeah.
Recent read.
I just reread The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. You know, it's an old classic there. Of serious stuff, a book called The New Republican Party.
Whoa.
For remaking the party. Interesting book by a couple of authors. What else is serious nature? I can't think of anything offhand now.
How many times do you think you rewrote, revised?
I am a pretty careful writer. I write fairly slowly. So I think unlike what I hear about other writers that just, you know, it's a burst of imagination, particularly for the fiction writing, I was more methodical about it, which meant that although there was a fair amount of editing that had to be done, I didn't have to rewrite very much. You know, I'd just move some sentences around and I'd knock out a paragraph here or there or something, but generally it was, there wasn't a whole lot. When I got to the publishing stage, I was assigned an editor, and she called me up and she said, you know, that was a good read. That's very well structured and very well done. And I was delighted. And she said, I'm going to send you back some, you know, the red pen suggestions for changes on this. And I thought, well, it would probably be at the 8 or 10, 12. She said it was a good read. I don't think there was a sentence, of course, hardly a sentence that she hadn't had some comment on to tighten it up, clean it up. And 95, 98% of them were good suggestions, you know. I thought I had it in great form, but a little change here, a little bit there.
You're tweaking.
It's a tweak, yeah. Missing comma, change a phrase around, all good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jay, I thought when I started reading your book the first time, I thought it was great. And I remember when I joined the Marine Corps 20-something years ago, my grandmother saying, oh, you know, little marching in Swamp Key like they did those boys. So that's really the first time I ever heard of this incident. And then I went through the Charlie Range as a recruit, and the drum troopers took us down there when we were out at the rifle range and took us to the edge of the River Creek, and they act like they were getting weepy thinking about, you know, this how awesome an incident this was, killing recruits, how they wish they could have done it, and all that stuff.
Incentive, huh?
Yeah,
Took away all the fun.